I don't even know how to start this video. Oh my god. Okay. So this is not the Game Boy Advance SP Unhinged. This is actually my Analogue Pocket. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because when I wanted this, there weren't a lot of amazing options out there, at least in this form factor, and at least I could play real cartridges. So I kind of looked into alternatives, and what I ended up stumbling upon was, well, the Game Boy Advance SP Unhinged. So in this video, we're gonna go over all of the steps it's gonna take to modify your Game Boy Advance SP into this, which I initially wanted to replace with this, but since got my hands on this, it's a whole thing. Let's get into it. Now before we get into it, I just wanted to give a friendly reminder to go ahead, subscribe, like, share, comment, do all of the fun stuff with this video because it means a lot to me personally and also really helps this channel grow. I first heard about the Game Boy Advance SP Unhinged from Boxy Pixel about a year ago through various other YouTube channels and some friends, and I was very intrigued by it. Again, I was looking for an Analogue Pocket, and at the time, was nearly impossible to get, at least at a reasonable price. So I looked into alternatives because, as I've said before in a lot of my videos, I'm a purist when it comes to playing games, and there's just something just a little bit different about playing a game authentically on a real cartridge. This one reminded me of the Analogue Pocket. So that's kind of why I went with it, and I will say that this mod was one of the biggest pain in my asses that I have ever experienced. I cannot express to you how annoyed I was. I actually had to just stop filming altogether and come back. Actually, when we go through this build, you'll see that there was a moment where I just forgot to put the speaker in, and so I had to undo the entire mod and then put the speaker in and then redo it. I can't express how angry this thing made me, and especially when there wasn't much of a point. This thing will probably collect dust on my shelf at this point because I got my Analogue Pocket in the time I was waiting for this to get shipped to me. I don't even know what to say. Either way, if you don't have an Analogue Pocket and you want to play authentic games on a brand new brightness controlled IPS screen, I would highly recommend getting one of these. Unfortunately, this mod can get a little expensive. Mine came in at about $175 and included the aluminum shell, rechargeable battery, IPS LCD screen. You are also required to get the machined buttons. The stock buttons on the SP don't fit this build, but you can choose to get the machined aluminum trigger buttons, which I did opt to get. I also went with rechargeable USB-C and was debating on whether or not to do the headphone audio jack mod. I got that as well, but also purchased the plugs just in case I decided to change my mind. So, like I said, you're getting a lot in this build. However, it can get a little expensive. Full disclaimer before we get into this build, I am not an expert by any means. I am an enthusiast who really enjoys doing this and playing retro video games. So I'm not the best, nor do I claim to be the best. So my soldering experience is very limited and I did not do a fantastic job. But if you use this guide along with the Boxy Pixel guide, I think you should be just fine with this mod.
All right, so here we have the donor Game Boy Advance SP. Just wanted to give it a little test, make sure it was still working properly. First thing we're gonna do, we're gonna flip this over and we're gonna take off the battery. So luckily this is really easy. Little Phillips screw. Now we're gonna take off 4 back screws. Take off the shell. 5th one there actually, and 6th one. I again am an idiot and took me a little bit. Take that off. This is gonna reveal obviously 3 more screws that the motherboard attaches to the shell here. Take those off as well. From there you can just kind of lift this thing up. Just be a little careful again if you want to save. If you want to save the screen, you can definitely do that here, but you just have to be a little bit careful. I'm gonna take off this ribbon cable here, and this is what you want to be safe about. Just make sure those are all the way up, and it should just pop right off. Next, we're going to take off the RF shield here. Again, these are all Phillips screws. It makes it really simple. Take that off because we are going to add this to the SP Unhinged shell. All right. And lastly, we're going to take off these trigger buttons here. You just kind of flick that pin out and it just pops off. Really simple here. Also, not sure what happened with my camera. Looks like the saturation got turned up a little too high here. Once that's done, you can get rid of that back shell. And here is the Boxy Pixel shell. Here is the LED diffuser for the power, our machined buttons, and our machined triggers. So go ahead and put those buttons right in here. They should just fall into place pretty easily. Last one here. And then from there, we can add the silicone pads. This is also where you would be smart and add the speaker. And I was just so distracted getting these silicone pads on here. I did not add that. So add that so you don't have to disassemble everything. Up next here, we are going to add the USB-C recharging port. You can also use the little plug instead on the bottom if you want. But first things first, let's get some Kapton tape. This will prevent any shorts with the metal on metal. Should look something like that. I added a piece of double-sided tape additionally to adhere that to the back. Fits in there perfectly. Next is going to be the headphone jack mod. You can choose to do that. I opted not to. I heard from a friend it actually didn't work that well. So we went with the plug instead. And all you'll do with the plug is you will pop it down in the little slot over here. You can super glue that in place. All right, this is where it gets really tricky for me. I was not good at all on this. And you will want to solder the negative wire to this pad here. As you can see, clearly struggling here.
I'm really bad at this.
Definitely would recommend doing this with a friend. The next part here, positive over on this pad here. And that's what it should look like. Next, we're actually going to go ahead and attach the ribbon cable. This was supplied with the LCD IPS screen from Boxy Pixel. Go ahead and slap that in there. And you'll want to pre-tin that little pad right there. You'll find this in the guide if you use the Boxy Pixel guide. Solder a wire between that and the connector and tape it down with some Kapton tape to get it out of the way. That will be for brightness control for this beautiful IPS screen here that we're going to install next. All right, next we will attach the ribbon cable here to the screen. Actually kind of found this a little bit difficult. Just had some trouble fitting it into that slot. Of course, the satisfying peel here. Oh yeah. From here, we're gonna take the motherboard and pop it in, kind of wrap this ribbon cable in almost like a cylindrical way there. And we're gonna actually take these wires. There's a little hole in the middle top of the board, and we will pull those wires through because we have to solder them on the other side of the board. Now this part was particularly tricky. Ultimately, it should look like this. I actually had to detach the ribbon cable to get it there. And we will secure the board to the new shell. This actually only takes 2 of those 3 screws. And I actually had to undo the ribbon cable here to make sure I could get everything in there and do the cable management. And I found it a little bit easier to do it this way. So took me a little bit of time, but there we go. Get some Kapton tape and secure that as well. And of course, I forgot to film this, but essentially follow the Boxy Pixel guide online and secure these wires to those parts of the board and the charging port. Okay. All right, so let's actually attach the RF shield here to this. It should just sit on there. It only takes 1 screw. Go ahead, screw, screw, screw. Get that all secured, perfect. And now we will solder the battery on and connect that. So take the negative end here. Go ahead and solder that right on there. And we will take the positive end over here. I would recommend getting the Boxy Pixel battery. It is almost triple the power of the original stock battery. After soldering, this is kind of a close-up view of what this should look like. All right, now that we've done that, we can take this top part of the screen and secure that. I'm kind of doing this out of order. I'm not sure why I chose it to do this way. But we will screw these loosely in to secure that screen. The Boxy Pixel Guide does recommend getting some sort of small foam padding because it does have just this loose kind of feeling to it if you let it sit in there otherwise. And now we can add the trigger buttons. Kind of just fit right in there perfectly. Next up, we can add the power slider. Just make sure it's in the down position while this is happening. All right, let's get this back shell on here. You can kind of loop the battery cord through the little hole there. Should just kind of snap right into place. Might have to play around with it a little bit. And we will screw these in. There are 4 screws here. Our battery. Pretty easy, just snaps right in. You will have to do a little bit of finagling here. The cable management was a little challenging. And lastly, let's add our finishing touch with the Boxy Pixel backplate. And just a couple more screws. All right, time to test it. My Pokemon Ruby here. And it does turn on. So satisfying. And there you go, folks. That is the Game Boy Advance SP Unhinged from Boxy Pixel. I went with the all-black aesthetic to kind of give it that analog pocket look. And it is an absolute beauty.
Thank you again for watching this video. If you like the content, I would implore you to please hit that big red button down below, subscribe, like this video, comment. It really means a lot to me personally, and again, helps this channel grow. And we'll see you in the next video.